1, credits are starting. When you see yourself on screen, you will be live.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. I'm Fahima Mohammed, your host and relationship coach, and we are here welcoming you all from British Muslim TV to all of you, wherever you're streaming, whether it's on live, on Sky Channel 752, Facebook or Twitter. You can join in the conversation for the rest of the episode, which is going to last an hour. The number's at the bottom of your screen. If you want to call in directly to speak to myself and my guest tonight, please do dial 01924 231083. Please do ask the bill payer's permission, as standard network rates do apply. You can send a message anonymously for free on our WhatsApp service alternatively, and I'll read that out to my guest as well. And that number is 07585835150. Now, do take advantage, as we do have a special guest tonight, and we're going to be discussing, do women secretly love to hate men like Andrew Tate? Obviously a name that everyone is familiar with, but we have a guest tonight who can be sometimes even referred to as our UK version of him, maybe, but we're going to find out. And please do help me welcome our guest tonight. We have Mehdi Tijani. Assalamu alaikum, Mehdi.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Pleasure to be here.
Very, very welcome. And it's our pleasure to have you here on British Muslim TV. I know how busy you are, and I know that you hardly do interviews in a hurry. So I really do, really like the fact that you've actually given us your time today. I just want to find out, firstly, a little bit about yourself. A lot of people have, all these opinions about you. And I want to, give you an opportunity to discuss, who is Mehdi Tijani? What do you do? And then we can go into the topic. So
Absolutely.
Take it away.
So, as you mentioned, my name is Mehdi Tijani, and I have somewhat unwittingly become a social media personality, influencer, and matchmaker as well. And I've been accused by my detractors of being obsessed with the topic of women. And I would like to respond to those detractors of mine that they are absolutely right. I am. And I'll tell you why. It's because I have seen time and time again, as I'm sure many can relate, how a woman can make or break a man in a marriage. And so many men do marriages wrong, and they live lives of just nightmare. If you have a look at the banner on my YouTube channel, it's an ayah from the Quran. And the ayah translates to, "And from his signs we have made from you wives, so that you may find peace and tranquility inside her." And I can tell you, as a man who has been married now for almost 20 years, I can't believe I'm even saying that, to at least one wife for 20 years, sometimes more. I have multiple wives as we speak right now as well. And I have experienced the best of women, and I have experienced the worst of women. And what a woman can do for a man, for better or for worse, is incalculable. It's hard to put it into words, how she can really give you that push and elevate you, or how she can really drag you down if you yourself as a man don't know how to get the best out of her. And that's what I talk about online, and I share my experiences, and I had a touch of spice in my delivery as well. And I've ended up as misogynist Mehdi or something like that.
Yeah, no, I actually find it quite interesting what you just said and how you started off. And I do actually agree with the point of how much control women do have, but they just don't know how to use it. And if they do, they can do it in a very negative way and use that negativity as in to blame the other. So I do agree with you there. And I think that's where a lot of people don't want to admit that. But at the same time, when you talk about adding the spice, now that's where we have an issue, I think, a lot of the times I hear with the spice that you do add. And that spice, a lot of people can't handle with regards to some of your opinions when it comes to women. As much as you have experience, some of the opinions are quite I don't even know what word I would use, to be fair, but a
Mm,
lot comes to mind, let's just say. And I'm not here to sort of like spew any of what's been out there, because I'm sure everyone's already aware of it. But at the same time, when we're talking about someone like the man, the influencer right now, Andrew Tate, when we
mm.
talk about how he can cause so much of love and hate from society, and do you think now there are more men turning towards him only because he has turned to the religion, or is it because of what he says? And
Mm.
why would women not like him or like him? What would be your take on that?
I mean, what you will find with individuals, and the reason why we're using the name Andrew Tate today is because he's the hot topic, he's most relevant. But you don't have to be Andrew Tate to be able to experience a similar level of success with your woman or women, as in my case, for example, if you just know how to get the best out of them. Now, there are, with regards to Andrew Tate in particular, let's just stick with him because people have seen how he is online. One thing he is extremely unapologetically polarizing. And especially when you're dealing with a woman, women can't help but respect a man who shoots straight and says it as it is, even if it may be to his own detriment. They respect that. Why? Because she knows this man is not trying to pull the wool over my eyes. So I might not like what he's saying, but I can trust him because he's saying something that he knows he's going to get a ton of flack for. He knows a lot of women are going to hurl names at him and so on. And yet he's still standing on his square confidently, despite the many insults and all of his detractors and so on. And he's just saying it as it is. And men who embody those qualities, and it's not easy because we have a tendency to people please. We have a tendency to want to tell people what they want to hear. It's a natural inclination. But if you are able to just stand confidently on your square and tell a woman as it is, even if it may be to your own detriment, she will respect you. And sure, you may lose some along the way, but you will also win a whole bunch along the way as well.
It's interesting that you say that, knowing how to get the best out of them, right? Knowing how to get the best out of women. Again, I think these sort of like statements is so generalized, and that's where we sort of have these opinions, because I think there's so many different categories of women. So when you're saying this, we obviously are talking to such a spectrum of different types of women, and that's why you'll find some of these opinions, which is quite loud out there, which do not actually accept what you say is being said. When you talk about handling women as well, sometimes that's seen as if they are kind of a property to be kind of controlled or
Mm.
tamed or put into perspective. So I know even if me saying this might come across as feminist or whatever, but I'm just querying, what kind of women are you talking to? Because today there's a lot of women who are actually not actually even wanting to hear it, not wanting to accept what you're saying. But who are these women that you're talking to? I want to know exactly the kind of category you are referring to.
You see, the mistake that many men make is they're asking for a playbook, an instruction manual from women of how to deal with women. And this is not the way to go because a woman doesn't want to necessarily tell you how to get the best out of her, just as a teacher doesn't want to have to give you the answers in an exam. Otherwise, how on earth are you going to pass the exam? You just need to just quote unquote get it. You just need to be able to just understand it. And part of that goes back to what I was saying initially, which is shooting straight and telling them it as it is. Now, to go back to your question, what was your question again, Fahima? Remind what your question was.
It was about, categorizing women, because I think sometimes when you and many men speak, it's very generalized, and I don't think it applies to a lot of types of women. And today's women in this
Let me make
generation,
let me make the first controversial statement for you, Sister Fahima. Sorry to cut you. And
that's
that
fine.
is that all women secretly want to be controlled by a man. They
Oh, really?
secretly want to, not in an oppressive manner, not in a manner that deprives her from her rights, not in a manner that suffocates, none of that. No, but she wants to be told what to do. She wants you to reduce the number of options that she has to deal with, even if it's just as simple as taking her out to dinner. Just choose something for her. You know the woman, you've known of her however long, just pick something for her. If you can remove choices or give her as few choices as possible, she will thank you for that, because women notoriously they struggle with decision making, right? Especially when there are many options. And I use the word control to be intentionally inflammatory, but the truth is it's not control. It comes from a place of love and care. And that is, I want to remove as many obstacles from your life as possible. So, sweetheart, this is what we're going to do. And they love you for it.
What happens, Mehdi, when there are women out there that are taking control and they're the ones that are actually driving? And how does that play in a relationship now, especially for these kind of masculine men, which are very rare, and they're changing themselves as well? So how does that work?
Yeah, they end up in my DM. That's how that works.
Saying what?
No, I'm not spicy stuff. They end up in my DM complaining. And I say to them, look, there comes a time where you, especially for women who may have particularly, how can we say, controlling tendencies, they feel that they have to steer the ship, so to speak. You have to let go. That you just have to let him do it. Some of them will say to me, for example, but I can't trust him, or he won't do it as well as me. Well, then, if a woman finds herself in a situation like that where she feels, and she might be wrong, by the way, but she may be right, but she feels that her husband can't do whatever it is she wants to do as well as her, well, in that case, you must make a decision. Either you let go and let him take charge and let him learn on the job. There's going to be a learning curve process, or you are going to continue down this road of disenchantment, and inevitably, it results in divorce, because women don't want to lead a relationship. It doesn't matter.
Yes, of course. We are going to come back because we are going to be coming onto a short break in a few moments, and we will continue our conversation with Mehdi. He's definitely spiced it up at the very beginning, and we are coming on to our break shortly. Please do stay with us, as we are going to be continuing our conversation with Mehdi, and he's going to give us some much more indication with regards to women's mindset and a man's mindset, and obviously the change in gender kind of roles in today's society, especially by the West, how Muslims are influenced. And we're going to hear so much more. And if you do have any questions, please do call in or send in any of your sort of messages directly to our WhatsApp sort of call, and I will read them out. And do stay tuned, as we will be back in a few minutes. Don't go away. This conversation is just getting warmed up, and I'm looking forward to the next part in a few moments. We will see you very shortly. See you. Take care. Salam. Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. I'm here with Mehdi Tijani, talking about how women secretly love to hate men like Andrew Tate. Do you not even think that nowadays, I also hear a lot of women complaining that there aren't many masculine men around? And do you think that's the fault of women, the West, or just men being a bit lazy? What's that all got to do with it as well? Because I do see that a lot of, in my sort of like comments and DMs as well, with women saying, fine, men, women should be, as you mentioned before, kind of like, letting the man take control and, giving her this. But then a lot of these men are lacking. What's happening there?
Well, Allah says in the Quran, الرجال قوامون على النساء, that the men are the protectors and maintainers of women. And I'll tell you where we went wrong, Sister Fahima. Where we went wrong was that we continually asked women, what do you want from us? And you might think, well, what do you mean you continue? What's wrong with that? You're taking my feelings into consideration and so on. There are so many ironies and contradictions when it comes to getting the best out of a woman. For example, I'll give you a very extreme example. There's something called hybristophilia. Hybristophilia, you're probably familiar with the term, is where there is a demographic of women who have an affinity to serial killers, to murderers, to men who have been found guilty of heinous crimes and locked up as a result of that. They have raving cult-like fan bases online. This became so bad that female prison guards in America had to be removed from the prison system because they kept on falling in love with the inmates. So what contradiction am I referring to here? The contradiction I'm referring to is, on the one hand, you would think, obviously, it's a bad thing to be a serial killer, try not to be a serial killer, guys, and all of the rest of it. But then on the other hand, there is this sort of pull, this affinity that women have to men capable of extreme violence. Now, you can take a lesson from men like that without actually having to go and kill someone. And that lesson is, for example, adopting certain qualities or characteristics that those men might have in too much, in abundance, such as their assertiveness, such as controlled aggression. I know both of those words are very triggering, particularly for the modern woman today. Control and aggression. Yes, you want your man to be capable of controlled aggression that is under control, because what do you have if you don't have a man who's capable of doing that? You have a deer in the headlights, you have a rabbit, you have, I'm sorry to say, you have another woman, and a woman doesn't want to be with a woman. She wants to be with a man. So, and this is something I found as well in my interactions with my wives, in that there are times when they will find me annoying, like the way I am is a bit headstrong and so on, but they respect it. And afterwards, they'll come around and thank me for it as well. So in that moment, they might have an issue with it, but they know that I'm usually right, and I am usually right. It is what it is. And they accept it for what it is, even if it can be slightly annoying in that moment in time.
I guess what you're trying to refer to is kind of like the bad boy or the mafia kind of thing, more so than the serial killer. I think that's where I
Yes.
use that term. It's like, I need a mafia to be able to, handle me or be with me kind of thing. So these are the kind of traits you're talking about, the characteristics, and they're kind of like diminishing over time, either due to fear, thinking that it's seen across as this terminology of toxic masculinity that's been thrown around as well. And the rise of feminism as well, which again we hear and we know that they are the most unhappy and depressed in their relationships a lot of the times too. So at the end of the day, I do understand where you're coming from and what you're saying, and I just think that it's to do with some of the terminology, like you said, that's been thrown around that most women can't handle, or but there's nothing wrong, do you think, in actually asking a woman, but at the same time, it's not necessarily following suit exactly. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, it's a real puzzle getting the best out of a woman, because there are times when you do want to ask her, like, I don't know, what color dress do you like, or something, I don't know, something like that. But there are other times when women, as yourself as a woman, Fahima, is when we'll competency test you, or more crudely known as SHIT test you. And that is, she will throw something your way to see if you have the testicular fortitude to tell her no. And there is actually a logical, biological reason for this. And that is, if she says to herself, if you can't say no to me, if you can't stand up for yourself and tell me no here, when you know that you should be saying no to me, you shouldn't do that, or you should do this, I shouldn't be preventing you from seeing your friends, or whatever the case may be, or giving you a curfew, be back at 7 p.m. If you can't stand up for yourself here, how on earth are you going to be able to stand up for me if I find myself in a compromised situation one day? So as much as men get annoyed with competency testing and women telling them one thing whilst expecting another, there is actually a sound, logical reason for it. And that reason is, she wants to see, what type of man are you? Will you stand up for yourself? Because if you will stand up for yourself in a respectable manner, not in an oppressive manner, but if you do stand up for yourself, this gives her a reasonable degree of confidence that if the need arises, you will stand up for her too.
I think what you're saying is very old school, because I think a lot of these tests were probably done maybe it was subconsciously or consciously in the past, where the traits were tested. But now, unfortunately, we are following suit with media, and it becomes so surface. And I think that's where we're failing when we're testing each other, because we're thinking about things which is so, again, it's definitely not anything to do with characteristics. It's more to do with either finance, and even though that is an important part, but when it comes to a real man, because a lot of the times a lot of men can work, a lot of men can earn, but do they have the actual seriousness and characteristics to actually want a relationship? then you got to obviously differentiate between that working man and that career man and that professional man, if he's actually there for a relationship or he's just there to mess around. So that's where the difference lies. And I think a lot of us are losing track on that because, again, we are not focused on the surface. The other thing is, when you talk about your several and different wives, how, why, tell me, well, how does that work?
Why? Why not? The only thing better than one wife is another wife.
Okay.
And like a Pringles can, once you pop, you can't stop. You know, I mean, it is what it is. Well, I mean, all jokes aside.
Is that how you kind of help people even as a matchmaker? Because there's this thing that you are also involved in, which is the no strings sort of attachment. Explain that to me.
Yeah, no strings to cat. I mean, it's misyard is what it is. Now, I've actually sunsetted the app, and I'll explain why I sunsetted the app afterwards. But no strings nikah is predicated upon something in Islam, and I'm not an Islamic authority or a scholar for those of you who might be feeling some type of way. But misyard is where a woman voluntarily, off of her own accord, forsakes some of her rights. Okay, and this is well documented and stipulated in the religion. And I'm not going to go down the religious texts and so on because it's not my place to do so. But the term is misyard. Now, by 2030, 45% of all prime-aged working women, that is, women between the ages of 25 to 45, will be single and childless. Why? As women become more economically capable, they earn more, they are still hypergamous by nature. That is, they marry across and up dominance hierarchies. She still wants her superior. Go to a millionaire man and ask him if his wife needs to be a millionaire. He'll tell you probably not. She just has to be hot. But go to a millionaire woman and ask her, does her husband have to be a millionaire? She will most probably tell you yes. Now, one of the, shall we say, unforeseen side effects, there's a better word, but it's not coming to my mind right now, of women earning more is that they have accidentally shot themselves in the foot with regards to their mating partners or choices of men to choose from, because they still marry up. So as an example, 1.5% of men in the UK actually have a PhD. Okay. The men who have PhDs don't mind marrying a woman who doesn't have a PhD. Now, she might have a master's, she might just have a bachelor's, but she doesn't have to have a PhD. Whereas a woman who has a PhD, she would be far more headstrong on marrying someone, quote unquote, on her level. If he doesn't have a PhD, then he better be the CEO of a company or something like that. Something of similar prestige and status. Now, if we consider that only 1.5% of men in the UK have a PhD, and that includes the gay men, that includes the married men, that includes the old men, her choice or her potential pool of partners has diminished dramatically. Now, am I saying that women shouldn't pursue PhDs or careers or whatever the case may be? That's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is, in life, there are choices and trade-offs. And one of the unforeseen trade-offs we have found with women pursuing careers as a priority or education as a priority is that they have unwittingly diminished their pool of choice, the number of suitors that they have to choose from. And that's why by 2030, nearly half of women between the ages of 25 to 45 will be by choice single and childless.
Is it their fault though that they're choosing to be educated and things like that? Or is it, the diminishing of men's status and not actually, increasing in that 1% as well at the same time? Because I think that, at the end of the day, I also see the other side of it is, they're not going into education and higher level because they want to, is because they feel that if these men that are supposed to be protectors and providers are not protectors and providers, or they've come out of something that isn't there, then they have to provide for themselves. So there is also this thing where if something goes wrong, it's, because you're, the women studying and they're going higher in education and the man can't match. And well, the problem is it should be more than 1%. Why are those men not increasing in the percentage?
I mean, this excellence has always, if everyone was excellent, it would no longer be excellent.
It's not excellence. It's just about, just
I'm talking about the upper echelon. First of all, this is not an issue of fault, by the way. I don't blame women and I don't blame men, but this is just an issue of biology. And that biology is, no matter how many men sorry, women get a PhD, for example, or increase their educational prospects, because by nature they still marry up, there will always, just it's the way it goes, as a result of that, be a diminished pool of men for them to choose from. So a recommendation that I could give to a woman who did want to pursue her education would be get married young and pursue your education anyway. You see, so you can have your cake and eat it. Jordan Peterson even alluded to this in one of his podcasts, which is he himself obviously has nothing against women pursuing education and so on, although we could have a whole separate discussion with regards to Western education, but just let's keep it broad for now. But he said, prioritize marriage first and then pursue your education.
Perfect. No, I really do appreciate you answering those questions. And we are coming up to our second break, where we're going to be coming back to Mehdi in a few moments. Please do stay with us, as again, this is a very interesting conversation, and I hope to see you back here in a few moments. Rewind, take note, and come back in a few moments. See you very shortly. Take care. Salam. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. We have the special guest tonight, who is Mehdi Tijani, talking about the secretly love on, or hate even, of men like Andrew Tate. There's a lot of obviously controversy around his kind of like, you know, statements saying and what he stands for. A lot of people do look up to him, but we're wondering as to why. Is it because he's just turned to Islam, or is it really his actual concepts? And we are analyzing women and men's mindset tonight, and why is there issues around marriages and divorces. Now, Mehdi, you mentioned briefly before about the no strings sort of marriage, and how does that work? And is that something which is more prevalent now? And obviously it's something where most people are not going to obviously announce and talk about, but whenever anyone hears it, I mean, I'm not going to lie, when I, you know, first heard it, I was like, as like everybody else, like, you know, how could this be? But, you know, coaching and understanding different people's scenarios and situations, even men who are in marriages, unfortunately, that have to stay in their marriages to keep the family together, but they're not happy, but they're not going to break that family, they will actually enter into it. And it's allowed for a reason, and it is there for a reason. And but anyone that hears it, especially women, they will just completely eradicate the whole idea and put it down like as if it's a misuse, or you know, some sort of like a very low sort of like way of living and being. So how does that sort of sit with you, and how do you find that sort of issue?
I mean, it's super interesting because the type of women who are typically against this are women who they themselves are married, typically have with their first husband. They are the ones who are usually most against this, because the thought of having obviously to share their husband with another woman is distasteful for them, to say the least. And the types of women who are most open to this are women who've actually been through life, who've accrued life experience, have seen the best and worst of marriage, and kind of understand for the stage of life that they're in, that actually this might be convenient for me. What do I mean? The avatar of woman, I've mentioned this many times on my channels, but for the audience, they might be hearing me for the first time, who is most suited to this is a woman typically who's been married once, twice, thrice, 2 or 3 times before. She has children, oftentimes from 1, 2, maybe even more baby fathers. She has a job, a career of her own. She has her own life. And the thought of bringing another man into her life, another man setting up his closet in her bedroom and starting that rigmarole all over again, is like, it's like a major no-no for her. At the same time, she's still a woman. She still enjoys the companionship of a man. She still has physical needs like we all do. What's the solution here? And this is where the misyar type marriage is, or a lot of women who fit that avatar have resonated with this concept, which is, okay, I can be with a man in halal, which is what is most important, but I don't have to deal with him all the time. I don't have to cook for him every day. I don't have to have him ringing me up where am I 24/7. So it's an arrangement that both parties have to come to. And so long as you are able to manage your emotions, it can work splendidly. Ask me how I know.
How do you know the $1 million question, Mehdi? How do you know? Set me up with some answers here, which is concrete.
Well, I mean, anecdotally, because I've done it and I do it and I'm in it right now. I will say, though, however, this is not for the inexperienced brother. This is not for a brother who doesn't have any experience with women. I have to say that. And this is not for the sister who's never been married before, the sister who still wants to get married and have a family and children and so on. It's not for you two. Okay. This is for a man who has experience of dealing with women, and for a woman, more importantly, who has her own life, who's done the whole full-time marriage thing before. Maybe she's done it a couple times before and she doesn't want to do it again. But most importantly, she doesn't want to fall into haram. She doesn't want to commit zina, fornication. We have to find a solution for such an individual. And you will find, by the way, this concept of misyar is rife in the Middle East. It is rife is the
Yes.
wrong word. It's negative. It's very, very popular. It's like it's big over there. It's really big. And I foresee this arrangement not just growing, but becoming even more essential for Muslims here in the West as the years progress, because women are ultimately increasing their economic status. And rightly or wrongly, whichever way we want to put it, men are not at a par with that. And we can go down that rabbit hole as to why that is. But the bottom line is now most women find most men economically unviable. And that's just one metric, by the way. Most men are unviable in many regards. Like I was speaking with a friend the other day, and he said to me, you know, Mahdi, the way you are describing your experiences of dealing with men, it sounds to me like they're just undefendable. I was like, bro, that's the word. That's the word. Because my channel, my content is, you could say, men's empowerment or whatever it is, men type of stuff, right? But in my one-to-one interactions, in the many hundreds or thousands of one-to-one interactions that I have and have had and continue to have with men, I'm telling you, man, the majority of you guys are undefendable, bro. Wallah, you're undefendable.
When
It's
it comes to
pathetic.
the VR, I get what you're saying. Do you feel that the same rules do apply with age? Because I've known quite a few cases myself of it, and I think that the normal rules don't apply where women can go for younger men. They can be much older. It doesn't matter even with status then when it comes to it, or do you feel that the same sort of rules apply in those sort of circumstances too when it comes
I
to
don't under. How do you
marriage?
mean? I don't think I understand the question.
Basically, when you're marrying, generally, you'd want someone young and you'd want someone who is, of a certain caliber.
As a
Uh,
man or as a woman?
both.
Okay, right.
I think in that case, it doesn't matter for either party, like you were describing before, as to women want higher, lower, and men want, someone who is really young. But I think in that case, that's where they can even meet because it's not permanent marriage. It's just, a connection between the two of them. Do you think those same things apply? And that's
I
why
mean,
if it doesn't apply, it's probably easier to be with someone in a temporary sort of arrangement.
well, first of all, let's address those words, temporary and permanent. I mean, it's permanent insofar as when you marry her and when she marries him, there is no end date on the marriage, so to speak. So you're getting married and you're gonna go with the flow. But honestly, Fahima, that's all marriages. Anyone who says, I
Yeah,
marry you for a lifetime, number one, that's way too much pressure. All right.
yeah,
Look,
yeah.
my wives, they all know that they are on lifetime probation. Lifetime probation. And they know this. And I don't say it in a mean way, in a demeaning way. No, it's simply a case of this is a performance-based business. The business of being married to Mahdi is a performance-based business. And guess what, Fahima? Vice versa as well. And
Yeah,
you
I
know
was
what this does? This creates a healthy growth-based environment, an environment that is able to prevent stagnation and
mm,
both parties taking each other for granted. It
mm,
encourages both parties to keep on top of themselves, to be good to one another, to provide each other with positive, pleasant experiences. So when I say lifetime probation, I don't mean that in an evil way. I mean that in a growth-oriented manner, in a manner whereby both parties are encouraged to continually strive and improve the dynamics of their marriage. So this business of we're married for a lifetime, that's way too much pressure. We're taking this year by year, habibti. Okay. And my wives all know this. They all know this. So to answer your question of does age and status matter and so on, when it comes to a marriage like this, a misyar type arrangement, The short answer is no, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter as much, frankly speaking,
Exactly.
because then value is quantified in different ways. A woman will look at a man and think, okay, well, maybe he might not be as economically viable, but is he good looking? Is he strong? Is he charismatic? It
Yeah.
could be a number of things. Or maybe he's not good looking, but he's economically very viable. So in this instance here, we're able to bring different metrics of value to the table, and for men vice versa. I tell you what, Fahima, I deal with matchmaking with well-to-do gentlemen, well-to-do brothers. One brother, he asked me to find him a third wife, and he said to me specifically, he said to me, she can't be young. This brother himself, very wealthy, very well-to-do, and he's relatively young himself. He's like mid-30s. And he specifically said, I don't want a young. I said, why don't you want a young woman? What's that all about? He said, I don't have the space in my head to nurture her. I spend half the year on a plane doing various business deals, and I just don't have that mental space that mental time and space that she needs to nurture that relationship. I need someone who has experience, who has been married before, who understands that she won't be with me all the time and I won't be with her all the time. So you can see we're able to find solutions for different individuals according to the stage of life that they're in.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you find that this is actually going to be growing, like you said before, in our Muslim community, but obviously it's not spoken about and it's deemed in a particular way? Because I certainly see that. And that's why I always say that Islam has an answer for everything, even if people don't like to hear it. And like you said, I've had a lot of women even come at me as well when I've shared these kind of things, is because I see different sides of the stories, and I do see a lot of broken homes. And then what happens to the women? And they're like, I don't want to get married again. I've been there, I've done that. And right now, exactly what you've said, I have heard this from some of my clients, that we don't want another man in our household for our children. And so what you're saying, I have actually, heard myself and seen from quite a lot of women who have actually been married before and divorced, and they just don't want that. So as much as people don't want to hear it, they don't like it. And that's why I have also the opinions that I have, is because I see these cases and they are ever growing. So what do you say to those people that are kind of like, scared of this being a growth and scared of it happening? As much as you say, okay, it's not for this and it's not for that, but doesn't it also give a little bit of leeway and sort of to men to even sometimes misuse it, even if they are young and they've got a healthy relationship? What happens there? Because it's a little bit unfair to a certain extent as well, because women only can go from one to another, whereas men can have several at the same time.
I mean, I will say any virtue taken to its extreme becomes a vice. So any good solution, drinking water is good for you, but guess what, Fahima? Drinking too much water, you'll die of intracellular drowning. So any virtue taken to its extreme becomes a vice. And I will say as well, I will preface everything that I've just said with the fact that a conventional marriage is the best type of marriage. And I thoroughly encourage, particularly those going through issues in their marriage, to try and make it work, try and figure it out, because this is the best type of marriage. This is a solution. This is, I would say, I've said this before, this is a bad solution to a worse problem. It's a bad solution to a worse problem. And ultimately, it's better than zina, because we do have to find solutions for individuals who find themselves, married a few times before. She's got older daughters at home. She doesn't want to bring another man in. She doesn't know how this man is going to be around her children. The number one cause of girls being subjected to physical abuse, sexual abuse, by another man is the presence of a stepfather. These are real issues, and therefore we have to
Absolutely,
find
Mehdi.
real
And you know what?
solutions.
You've raised some important facts so far, and unfortunately, we are coming to another break, but we kind of have you back for the last segment. Please do stay with us. This is getting even more, interesting, and we are addressing so many topics. Please do come back when we will be after the break in a few moments. See you shortly. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the final part of Single Muslim live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. It's gone so quickly. I could easily talk for another hour with you, Mehdi, because it's interesting how you have a perspective of men and women in relationships, and it does show clearly that you do have the experience yourself, personally and professionally, dealing with so many different clients yourself in this matter and issue. It is really interesting that you mention, about the MCR, obviously, and how men and women think and feel about each other, the different spectrums. And now also coming on to, just briefly, I'd like to also find out about, in Islam, when it comes to, having multiple wives. And do you think only men like Andrew Tate or yourself in that particular way? What makes a man, in that way that can actually have that? And what kind of women will actually, allow themselves to be in that sort of situation as well?
We can summarize, I can answer you in 2 words, and that is unwavering certainty. She needs to see that you are a decisive decision maker, that you're decisive, period, full stop. But this decisiveness can't be feigned. It can't be invented. You can't make it up. You can't. Women have a very strong BS detector. Their social skills are far stronger than men's social skills. And they have a very strong BS detector for men who are fronting and men who are genuinely about that life. And the truth is that it's not just a matter of life experience, because there are plenty of men with life experience who are still terrible with women. It
Yeah.
comes down to what we spoke about at the beginning of this podcast, which is that ability to just say, this is what, Habibti, I love you. This is what we're doing. Oh, but I don't, but Habibti, I got you. Don't worry. This is what we're doing. And eventually you will infect has a negative connotation, but you will infect her with that certainty, because guess what? Emotions are infectious. If you played that famous baby laugh on YouTube right now, me and you, Fahima, would both start laughing our heads off. And if you asked us, if the producer asked us, why are you laughing? Neither of us would be able to give an answer. The baby's laughing and it sounds hilarious, and now I'm laughing. Why? Infectious. Why do film producers play canned laughter on comedy skits? Canned laughter is made up laughter because it encourages the audience to laugh. Emotions are infectious. And when you are decisive as a man, she can see that you are competent and you are decisive. You overwhelm her with that energy, with that emotion, and she trusts you. She will allow you to do something that she would not have allowed maybe her previous husband to do. She will accept something from you that she might not accept from another man. Why? Social senses, as I mentioned just now, women's social skills are very strong, and she can tell with a reasonable degree of accuracy which man can I trust and which man can I not. Now, I'm not saying that
I
they're
agree to
infallible
a
in that
certain
regard.
extent. I agree to a certain extent because I come across a lot of women who are very highly professional in their
Mm,
jobs, but they really don't have a very good detection when it comes to relationships. And they will actually accept a lot of BS, as you say,
mm.
from men, because even if they detect it, they put up with it. Because unfortunately, when it comes to relationships, I find them quite weak. And I
This
find
comes
them,
down to, yeah, I can't, in my work as well, I can't actually deny this because I've dealt with sisters and their husbands who fit this exact description that you've just mentioned. And this comes down to hyper agreeableness. Now, being agreeable is a positive trait for a woman, but again, any virtue taken to its extreme becomes a vice. If you're too agreeable, you're no longer agreeable. You're actually a coward, number one. And I'm sorry, I have to say that to the women who are hyper agreeable. You're a coward. If you're allowing your husband to commit dhulm, oppression upon you, he's sleeping with other women in haram. He is not providing for you. And I'm not making this stuff up. This is cases that I've dealt with. He's taking your rights away from you that Allah has given you. This is no longer agreeableness. Now this is cowardice. So again, any virtue taken to its extreme becomes a vice. And hyper agreeable women often find themselves the victims of this type of behavior from unscrupulous men who see behavior like this and think, yeah, I can take advantage of that. I actually understand why now, for example, I can't remember her name, wrote the book, Why Men Love Bitches. I read that book. I needed
yes,
to
yes,
read.
I do.
I get, wallah, I get it. Do I love
Yeah.
bitches? I can't stand them off the team in an instant. I like agreeable women, but I am
Yeah,
fair
but
to
that
my women.
actually is an acronym that means babe in total control of herself. It's not actually as in, a cattiness like, most people will think. So
Yeah.
I did read that book as well.
But what I'm alluding to for him is that, and I can't say how many women, but a significant number of women have had these negative experiences with men, unscrupulous men who have taken advantage of them. And now, as a result of that, they have found that when they're mean, they keep their husbands keen. Men like that.
Yes.
And it works. Now, ultimately, they end up miserable because women don't really want to be in control in a relationship. She doesn't want to be in control. She becomes disenchanted very quickly. But for that type of man, I get it. That's the way that you get the best out of him. It is what it is. And that's why I say for him, many men that I've dealt with, wallah, they're undefendable. I don't know what to say to you guys. You are undefendable.
And it's not just about women being agreeable. They're very scared to be by themselves. It's like when they're in that relationship, they just find it so difficult to let go because, maybe a lot of men, I think, generally can find another relationship, but, also that's debatable. But I do feel that with women, for them to really, put themselves out, especially in our communities, and accept another man, they become so attached that they feel like that is the only one, and he only exists, and that's why they do take some of the nonsense and they accept it because they feel that they don't or they can't find another, and they shouldn't find another, and they do stick. And I know that for a fact. It's just so difficult for women
I mean,
to
I will
feel
stress
like
this
a man.
again. I will stress this again, and that is that you must, both as a man and a woman, as a husband and a wife, you must exhaust all avenues before considering the final last resort, option of last resort, which is divorce. You must, okay? So it really is case by case. It comes down to what is it that you're going through. Is it, oh, he's annoying and he never tells me when he's coming home? I've had this from sisters, by the way. He doesn't tell me when he's going out or when he's coming home, and I just want him to text me, Habibti, are you his mum? Let the man go out and let him come home. Is he committing haram? I asked him. No. Is he providing for you? He's providing for me. Is he taking care of you and the children? He's taking care of me and the children. Is he a good dad? He's a good. Okay, khalas, leave the man alone. But if he's the type of man who he's sleeping in haram promiscuously with other women, and again, I'm giving you cases that I've actually dealt with. Okay, he is actually not providing for. He sends his wife to work and pay the bills whilst he earns, and he earns good money, and he refuses to spend on the family, but he spends it on the other bitches, on the haram, excuse my French, on the haram relationships that he has. Undefendable. So it's case by case, but I will say, as a general rule, you must exhaust all options to make your marriage work, and then sometimes you need to get a divorce. And guess what? Sometimes divorce is actually better than you staying with your partner, because the harm and damage you do to each other and you do to the children is greater than the harm that comes to the children off the back of divorce. And there is no doubt that there will be harm. Children raised in broken homes don't fare as well as children raised in nuclear homes. However, sometimes in a nuclear home, the damage done to the kids is worse than the damage done in broken homes. So it's case by case. But the general rule is do your best to make it work. Exhaust all options.
I will echo that. And I do thank you for saying that, because it is true, even though we are generalizing and we're talking about things and people will take it out of context, as they always do. We are here to sort of mend relationships, build relationship, keep homes together. And obviously being in that, first relationship, if it's not extreme circumstances of abuse or any other sort of, extreme circumstances which is detrimental and negative, then obviously you do take the other sort of precautions for it. However, we are talking generally here, so please do understand that. And that's why I love these conversations, because in this hour we are able to give the context. And if everyone's listening, please take time to rewind and listen if you've just joined in, and understand the kind of information that we're giving and from which context and sort of like information we're coming from. Now, Mehdi, I don't want to wait till the end, even though we are coming towards the end. I know people would want to know more about your content, where to sort of reach you, where to follow you. If they are interested in no strings nikah, maybe they might contact you, or even for advice. Please tell us, how does anybody reach you, and where can we listen to more of your sort of work?
You can find me on Instagram, the Mahdi Tijani. That's spelled the and then MAHDI TIDJANI. On YouTube, if you just write Mahdi, hit the first name that comes up, it'll probably be me. I've got nearly 200,000 subs on there, 160,000 subs on there. And then if you want to get closer to me, you can find me on the janissaries.com, where I go deep dive. We have group coaching there. That's JANISSARIES.com. And I also do matchmaking, but I only matchmake for well-to-do brothers who are earning more than $500,000 a year. And the reason for that is just they're easier to find wives for. That's the bottom line. It's like it's shooting fish in a barrel. They're very easy to find wives for. And obviously they have the money to pay. I'm sick of dealing with brokies.
Fair enough. And I like the fact that you're straightforward and you know exactly what you're getting when you're listening to Mehdi and also working and collaborating with him. And we are coming to the end of the show and we've got a couple of minutes left. I'd love to leave it with you for whatever final thoughts you want to share with our audience, with anyone watching, anyone struggling, whatever it is, please take it away.
Oh, for me, myself?
Yes, yes, definitely.
I want to hammer home this point again of I don't want it to be lost on the audience. We've spoken about Miss Yar, we've spoken about how it's quite an interesting arrangement and so on, but I want to hammer home this point, and that is do your best to make your marriage work. Because the truth of the matter is most men are most men. And although I gave an example of a man who, you know, sleeping with random women and traveling all over the world and whilst depriving his wife of her rights and not even paying damn bills, whilst those men do exist, the truth of the matter is most men are most men. Most men are reasonable. Most men are most men, just as most women are most women. And whilst you may, as a wife, feel some sort of disenchantment, particularly when you see social media personalities online. I had one woman reach out to me. She said to me, watching you has made me discontent with my husband. I was fine with him before. I was like, whoops, so that wasn't meant to happen. Most men are most men. And you, Habibti, are probably basic bushra as well. Not you, Fahim, I'm talking to the audience. You're probably basic bushra as well. So do your best to make it work with what you have, because you probably have children with him. You're invested in a marriage with him. And a bird in the hand is better than two in the bush. What you have right now is guaranteed. What lays ahead of you is not. Maybe you will get a better man, but maybe you won't.
Thank you.
You want to take
Thank
that
you.
risk.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, all your insights and information. Inshallah, we hope to collaborate again. I hope and bless you and your family with whatever it is that you endeavor in the future with your work and your several wives. And inshallah, you know, I do hope that you know, we can hear more of you in a positive light. Please do stay tuned with us for next week's show. We will be back, same time, same place. Thank you so much for tuning in and for tonight. Inshallah, we will see you next week. Happy Eid as well coming up. Take care. Salam alaikum. Good night.